All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the 35th episode of Marketo-fu. It's been at least a year since I've done the last episode, so I'm going to do this outside because it's nice in Seattle, and there's a lot of guilt when you live here about not being outside when you can be in the summer. But what we're going to talk about today, first, I want to thank Janet Dulski and her team, Will Harmon, Katie Pedroza, about a million other people in Marketo that have now opened up a sandbox for us to play with and make videos like this. So that's my dog Tango. And in this tutorial, we're going to be talking about building a bounce house, which is a fun way that I like to describe building a bounce management program in Marketo. So I'm going to share screen, and we're gonna take a look. We're gonna figure out where the share screen button is. Yeah, the one that says screen share. That's the one. All right, so a little rusty. We're going to get the kinks out. All right, so over in Marketo, in the aptly named Marketo-fu folder, I have a program called Bounce House. Now, just like you always would, it's an operational program, and I've gone ahead and followed some kind of naming convention. We haven't really set those for this workspace yet, but essentially what we're going to have here is just a couple basic things. So like most programs, you have an assets and a smart campaigns folder. And in the assets folder, I have a few static lists, and we'll talk about what these do and what they are here in a moment. But basically, I have a list for hard bounces, soft bounces, and marketing suspended. And then in the smart campaigns, I just have two. I have one smart campaign to catch the bounces, aptly named Bounce Catcher, and another smart campaign to clean it up, also named Clean Up. So in the bounce catcher smart list, what we're going to do is essentially we're going to look for if an email bounces or if an email soft bounces a minimum of 3 times. This number is very arbitrary, but remember that in Marketo, when there's more than one trigger, what happens is it's an OR. So you can apply other filters down here as well, and remember that the advanced filter logic that you would use here only applies to filters. So in this case, what this smart list is saying is either trigger that happens, whether the email hard bounces, which is just the email bounces filter, or if it bounces soft. And the reason I have a minimum number of times here for the soft bounce is just the fundamental difference between a hard bounce and a soft bounce is that a soft bounce is a temporary failure, whereas a hard bounce is more of a permanent thing. So I feel like one is good enough to know that we're gonna pause this guy for a little bit, right? Versus like with soft bounces, you might want 2 or 3 before you escalate on that lead. So on that note, let's take a look at the flow. For the bounce catcher flow, what we have is first thing we're going to do is add them to a list. So what this says is if it's a soft bounce, we're going to add them to the soft bounce list. And you guessed it, if it's a hard bounce, they get added to the hard bounce list. And if nothing, and then default choices do nothing. So one of those two things has to happen. We go ahead and mark them marketing suspended at this point. Then what we do, the reason is we don't want to send them any more emails. So we want to make sure that they're suppressed. Then what we do is we wait 2 weeks and we're going to remove them from these lists. And after we remove them from the list, what we're going to do is change data value back from marketing suspended true over to false. So we want to email these people again. And the reason we do all that is because if we come back over to the cleanup smart campaign, what we're simply going to do, we look at the smart list, is so we have the same kind of stuff. Email bounces any, is hard, is soft any. You'll notice I don't have any number of constraints here. And that's because they've been on the other thing. They were paused for 2 weeks. We tried to let the system kind of work out any kind of kinks to why they might have been a failed delivery in that window. And then we open up again after some period of time. That 2-week wait step is subjective. The number of times you might want to email somebody before you escalate them through that bounce catcher campaign might be different for your use case. But basically, once they've gone through that first campaign, what we want to say here is, okay, they bounced once, hard or soft, doesn't matter. If we wait 2 weeks and they do it again, what we're going to do is say, okay, if they were a member of that first smart campaign, the bounce house bounce catcher, that's what this says, and they're not in either of these lists, meaning we deleted them. So the reason that I set it up this way is I remove them from these lists so that we can have just certainty that this isn't going to fire just because they're a member of the Smart campaign and they're still in that 2-week wait period. So by making them not a member of these lists and deleting them out of them, I can then better manage that. Then over to the flow, what we do here is we add them to a list marking suspended, because we probably want to report on that over time of how many leads have we caught like this, and then compare that to our all up database. And eventually you might find that you want to delete these records maybe like 2 or 3 months before Marketo renews and tries to re-up your contract, because you have more more leads than your database allowance. Not that that's ever happened. I'm just saying maybe some people do that. And then over on the rest of the flows, flow 2 is we're gonna definitely employ a little bit of the kill it with fire approach. We're gonna mark them marketing suspended. We're gonna mark them email invalid, and we're gonna give an email invalid cause or reason. So simply, it was something like this record's email address bounced repeated number of times, so we viewed them as invalid. And then this piece is also optional, but I like to add an interesting moment. Especially if you're going to delete the lead from Marketo, this will force a sync into your Salesforce or CRM. You could also have another flow step here, if just instead of the interesting moment, just to sync it over to your CRM platform, and then away you go. That way you can delete the lead confidently out of Marketo. Any information that would like if they were to come back in again, it's all in Salesforce, so that would sync down. So you would still have a record that they should be unsubscribed. Or I'm sorry, suspended, not unsubscribed. Good philosophical point on that with when to suspend somebody versus unsubscribe. What I like to say is you want to suspend an unsubscribe is indicative of user behavior, whereas a marketing suspend is like a decision that you, as someone on the marketing ops team at your company, makes on the lead's behalf. So we can kind of keep those intents separate. It's either the intent of you, the ops expert, or them, the customer or prospect, or whatever they are. So this has been a very quick Marketo-fu, and hope you enjoyed it. And now that we have a sandbox, we're going to be making more of these. So definitely hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn, and let me know what kind of things you want to see, what kind of things you have questions about, and we will cover them then. Thanks.